From a busy Luton airport, the latest pod news. Google have opened up their news on Google Assistant developer information, which includes details on how to enable appearance on the Google equivalent of the daily news briefing. Before this week, you had to send a cheeky email to somebody you'd met at a conference, who then sent it to somebody else you met 3 years ago at a conference, who then suggested a nice man called Gordon, who then manually approved your Google account. That's what we did anyway. Your content will still need editorial approval. Last week, we reported that Panoply had suddenly stopped producing new podcasts, focusing instead on its hosting platform, Megaphone. Panoply's CEO, Brendan Monaghan, answered some of our questions on the announcement. Their 2 new podcasts are still going to be produced, and Megaphone is cleverer than the average podcast host. You'll find the full Q&A at podnews.net. We hear that, yes, Spotify is testing pass-through. According to somebody with knowledge of the matter, NPR were the driving force who requested that Spotify no longer cache their podcasts. They're now beta testing with a number of podcasters who are big enough, and more are in the queue. Finding Cleo, a podcast from Canada's CBC, has won a major award, the broadcaster says in a tweet, at the Third Coast Festival. The EU has passed a controversial new copyright law. It includes a so-called link tax, a right for publishers to demand payment from links in services like Google News, and an onerous demand for platforms, including podcast hosts potentially, to check for copyright infringement on upload. Podtrac has published their US Top 20 podcasts for August. Lawyer David Oxenford reminds podcasters of the US legal requirement to clearly identify sponsored messages in podcasting. The Outlier Podcast Festival in Los Angeles has confirmed Sam Sanders from NPR's podcast It's Been a Minute will be one of the guests, and the Pod News podcast is now in Deezer.